What happens when the sharpest strategic minds meet the power of inclusion? Welcome to the PhD with Women on IT Hack the Future. My name is Jimmy Navarrosa, and today's PhD Positivity Hack Delivered will be by our guest Rita McGrath. Our topic for today is Innovation Reimagined When Strategy Meets Inclusion. Episode 197 starts here. Let me remind you, this is a grassroots community that focuses on women in IT, an inclusive forum for women in technology, startups, and female leaders who are supported by men as well. And we bring heart to that hustle because empathy is our mojo and empathy is critical in innovation. Before we start our discussion, I want to take a moment to shine a spotlight on some incredible achievements from our community. Congratulations to Tambua Women in Tech on your Community Initiative of the Year nomination for the Women in Tech Global Awards 2025 by Women Tech Network. Your dedication to empowering women and creating real impact in the tech space continues to inspire and transform communities. Let's rally behind this incredible team and vote. Hooray to Celine Demir for being recognized as a Digital Talent Award nominee at the Right Brain Celebration event. Your recognition is a beautiful testament to perseverance, passion, and purpose. Cheers to you and all the incredible Right Brains Awards nominees who continue to light the way for future generations and digital leaders. Now let's go back to our topic, Innovation Reimagined When Strategy Meets Inclusion. Join us for an eye-opening positivity hack delivered with Rita McGrath, a professor, one of the world's leading experts on strategy and innovation, consistently ranked among the top 10 management thinkers globally by Thinkers 50, best-selling author of Seeing Around Corners and The End of Competitive Advantage, and also the host of the popular Thought Spark podcast. In this conversation, we'll explore how diversity fuels innovation and why, when women and underrepresented voices are part of the design process, the results are more inclusive, impactful, and visionary. Whether you're a leader, innovator, or change maker, this conversation will inspire you to rethink how strategy and inclusion can reimagine the future of innovation. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Rita. Thank you so much, Rita, for joining us, and it's an honor to have you here. To start, where in the world are you today?
Today I am in Princeton, New Jersey, in the United States.
Oh, wow. Rita, I know your strategy. You know your strategy so well. What made you realize that diversity isn't just about doing the right thing, but it is actually the most powerful tool for quickly growing and staying ahead in business?
Well, diversity has many dimensions to it. So the first thing is fairly obvious, which is the more you have a diverse team looking at a problem or a project, the more likely you are to better understand customers, the more likely you are to better understand what the needs are. So I'll give a couple of examples of where this didn't happen. Years ago, Procter & Gamble invented this great product, which was going to allow you to do dry cleaning at home, in your washing machine. And so, well, actually, I guess in your dryer, you put this substance in the dryer and you put the clothes in it and it would whirl them around and you get clean clothes as a result. And they thought this was going to be amazing. It was going to put dry cleaners out of business and it was going to take the world by storm. And released it to the market, and the market was just like, yeah, no, not really. I mean, a small percentage took it up, but very few people did. And it turns out that when you take something to the dry cleaner, the dry cleaning part of it is only a piece of the solution that you're hoping to achieve, which is you not only get the clothing cleaned, but you get it pressed and packaged and it looks nice and it's ready to wear. Whereas if you just dry clean it in your dryer at home, you still have to then iron it, you still have to prepare it. It's still a lot of work needed to get ready. And I don't know this for a fact, but my guess is that had they had a few women who had to do this for their husbands on that design team, they never would have released that product. Another one of my favorite stories is about this great idea that a team had to replace all the payphones in the city of New York with these internet-enabled kiosks called Link NYC. And the idea would be that, you would be paid for by advertisers. So you're advertising on the kiosk, and then you'd be able to plug your phone in. You'd be able to access the internet. It would be great. And I had an early conversation with members of that design team. And I said, well, what do you think people will use this for? And they said, it's going to be amazing. They're going to find the address of the local artisanal cheese shop, and they'll find out when the farmer's market is open. And that whole team was really great people, but very much the same. They were all from Ivy League schools. They all had sort of middle or upper middle class backgrounds. They were either engineers or MBAs. They sort of swam in the same circle. So they rolled these things out across the city of New York in a big, highly hyped launch. And within 48 hours, you had people watching porn in tourist areas. You had people doing, pretty unspeakable things in front of stores. You had homeless people setting up encampments around them, watching YouTube all day. And my argument would be, had they had someone on that design team who really had experience with what goes on the streets of the city of New York, they might have designed it differently. So I think the risk that you have when you don't have a diverse team looking at your innovation programs is that you really miss something important about the user need you're designing to, or the product that you're trying to create. I think a second thing that is equally important, but somewhat more subtle, is that teams that are welcoming of diverse people are also welcoming of diverse viewpoints. And that tends to create an organization which is more inclusive of welcoming unconventional ideas, which of course is highly relevant to innovation.
Thinking about seeing around corners, what major point, what major turning point in business do leaders often miss when everyone on the team is too much alike? And what is the real danger in that?
When everyone's too much alike?
Yes.
Well, you have a narrower range of what you see, right? So the advantage of having diverse perspectives when you're trying to open your aperture to broader trends going on in the larger world is you want people from diverse backgrounds, you want diverse educations, you want diverse social status, because it'll give you a wider range of possibilities to consider if you have diversity on your team.
You teach us that business edge doesn't last forever. How does making sure everyone's ideas truly count become a powerful, unique, and hard to copy way to stay successful?
Well, the idea that let's start with the idea that business doesn't, no competitive advantage lasts forever, and we've come from a world where people really believed that you could have what's called a sustainable competitive advantage. That you have an attractive position in an attractive industry, and you have a lot of entry barriers that protect that position, and then you can exploit that advantage for a really long time. And that was the traditional recipe for success and strategy. But what we know is that existing advantages will always come under pressure. Competitors will copy, customers get bored, customers are looking for whatever the next big thing is. And so your advantage will come under pressure. Sometimes it disappears entirely. If you think about something like BlackBerry, we gave up on devices with keyboards in favor of the flexibility of devices that had just finger imprints. So when you think about where the next idea is going to come from, as I said before, the more diverse people that you have on your team, the more likely you are to find something that nobody's thought before, or find something that hasn't been in the mainstream conversation to build the next advantage on.
We've covered the big picture of strategy. Now let's talk about how you personally tackle tough challenges. What is your strategy for problem solving?
For problem solving? Well,
Yes.
I think for a lot of people, they look at big problems and they get they get what's the right word, discouraged because the problem seems so enormous that there's no way you could tackle it all. So I'm a big believer in breaking big problems into smaller pieces that you can then tackle in manageable cost and manageable time frames. So I may not be able to solve this huge issue of whatever it is that you're facing. But if you can break it down into smaller pieces and then creatively look at how you might tackle each piece of it, I think that's a big part. I think the other thing that I try to look at is, who else is interested in solving the problem? And so how can you build alliances? How can you get other people on board that might also be interested in seeing the solution emerge? And so you don't have to go it alone, so break it in pieces, try to find allies, try to build up friends that can help address it.
When different people help design products, what's the most amazing result you've noticed in what the company makes or how well customers accept it?
When different
Um,
people,
when different people help design products,
uh,
uh, what's the most amazing results you've noticed in what the company makes or how well customer accept it?
well, I think a lot of times what makes a product great is when someone has a problem themselves that they're trying to solve, and very often that can lead to uh, quite remarkable results in the marketplace. So, just to take some recent examples, the guy that invented the Google, the feature on Google that sort of says, "Did you mean because you've misspelled something or you got something wrong?" He invented that for himself. He said he's a very good programmer coder, but he's not a great speller, and so he invented that to solve a problem he personally had. The Airbnb guys happened to be renting an apartment in a town that was hosting a convention, and they were struggling to figure out how they were going to make this month's rent. And so they thought, well, maybe there's a group of people out there that would pay a little bit of money to rent an air mattress on our floor during this very busy season when hotels are really expensive. Maybe there's a market, and they demonstrated that there was a market, and that led to the founding of Airbnb. So what you'll find is a lot of really great products that we take for granted today were invented by their entrepreneurs to solve problems they themselves were facing.
How can companies change? How they do research to find the hidden problems and unmet needs that are only experienced by certain groups of people who are usually overlooked?
Well, when it comes to finding, new kinds of problems, there's just no substitute for being on the ground, seeing how people behave, and I think companies over rely on surveys, and they shove a microphone at people and say, "Hey, do you have this problem? Would you like this solution?" I don't think people are very good at articulating the unmet needs that they have. But if you're on the ground in the community and you're asking probing questions like, what was the biggest challenge you had getting to work today, or what was the biggest issue that you have finding good food for your children, or how do you understand how to accomplish certain goals that you have in your life. If you're really on the ground observing, asking questions, you're with the people, you're seeing how they're navigating their days, there's no substitute for that. So you really need to be, in my opinion, really connected to what your customer's experience really is. So I'll give you an interesting example that was shared with me by a woman who's a very senior executive at a major packaged goods company. And she said, many of us that are middle class criticize poor people for buying what we would consider to be cheap food, or food that's got not very nutritious, not fresh, it's packaged, it's whatever. And she said, what we don't understand is that if you're a mother on a severely constrained budget, if you're really, really struggling to get your kids any kind of nutrition at all, the last thing you want is to buy them food that they may not eat. And so you're going to, if it comes to a trade-off, you're going to buy things that that at least they'll eat. So at least they're getting some nutrition, even if it's not the best, even if that if you had more money, you could, buy something different. But I think you have to have that level of empathy that you don't impose your own judgments and your own value systems on how other people behave, because it's also very easy to misunderstand what you're observing if you put your own lens on it. Like, you really need to try to look at it the way that your prospective customers are looking at it.
Innovation means taking risks. How can companies make it less scary for women or underrepresented innovators to try truly bold ideas without worrying or about being blamed or punished if they don't work?
Well, that's a huge issue. So the first thing I would say is innovation, by definition, involves smart risks. By definition, innovation means doing something new, right? And you're trying to look for something that works. So you're going to have a range of possible outcomes, some of which will be in the direction that you desire, and some of which will not be. So I think the first thing companies need to establish is an understanding of when a failure is intelligent or not. And so I even have a contract for what I call intelligent failures. So if I controlled the downside, if it was something that I could only learn about by taking an action, if it was contained in terms of the exposure, right? It's not something that's going to take the company down. It's a risk we could afford to risk, and it opens up an opportunity for something that might be large. So if you meet those criteria, then it's like a scientific experiment, right? So I think what women and other underrepresented minorities need to do is, first of all, come to that understanding with the other people in their organization. So let's build a culture where intelligent risk-taking, intelligent failures are regarded as kind of normal and necessary for taking the next step and for taking the next iteration in a particular journey. And then being very transparent about, here's what I did, here's why I thought it was a good idea, here are the assumptions, here's what we learned, here are the things we no longer need to try anymore because we've demonstrated that doesn't work, or here's what we now have learned so we can move forward. So being very honest and very transparent about what you're doing, I think, is huge. And then also making sure, again, that you're not doing this on your own. You want to make sure you're bringing in allies and people that are equally interested in learning what could be going on.
Everyone wants to move fast. What are the few essential checks or steps every team must take to be sure that they are asking inclusive questions before spending lots of time and money on an idea?
Well, again, I think what you want is you want to figure out what's the cheapest, lowest risk next step that you could take. So moving fast doesn't mean taking big risks all at once. Moving fast means moving through a series of learning events as quickly as you possibly can. So I call those checkpoints. So what you want to do is say, well, before I can travel a journey of 100 miles, I need to be able to go 10 feet. So let's go 10 feet and see what we've learned, and then we can communicate that to everybody else on the team. So what you want is rapid prototyping, rapid trials, rapid experiments, so that you move through your experimental stages as quickly as possible. And that can help you move fast, while at the same time you're being very clear and transparent with your coworkers and your colleagues about what you're doing.
Since a business edge doesn't last long, how can women use this idea to plan their careers or finding their next strong skill or role and making big career changes successfully?
Well, I think this applies to women. I think it applies more generally to people today. I think the ability to continuously learn is one of the skills that I think will stand us in good stead, because any specific skill is likely to become obsolete. So a couple of things I think are really valuable is don't focus so much on climbing up some kind of career ladder. I think that's a mistake. And increasingly corporations are not, the ladders are sort of getting short, and they're in many cases disappearing altogether. So what I would work on is building horizontal connections. Don't be afraid to take a horizontal step. So if you spent a lot of your time in marketing or some function like that, don't be afraid to take a role in finance or operations or somewhere that's a little bit new to you. Focus on learning. You've got to set time aside for continuously learning. And then something I think for women in particular that I see them not spending enough time on is building robust networks. So what people often don't realize is that we all have two kinds of networks that we can build. The first is, you can call them execution networks. So these are networks of people we deeply trust. We speak the same language. We can finish each other's sentences. We're very, very tight. And these are great networks for getting things done. We can count on each other. We can deliver results. We can work together. But there's another kind of network, and that's what you can think of as an entrepreneurial network. And these are often networks of weak ties. People I met at a cocktail party, people who, just suddenly showed up at an event that I didn't know about, someone I met maybe while taking a course, or someone I met in a discussion group. And these are people we may not know well at all. But here's the thing, they have access to information which is not redundant with all the people that we're very, very close to. So they actually have access to opportunities that might not be available to us in our close little execution network. So these are often opportunity or entrepreneurial networks. And what I would observe is that a lot of women, get really busy, their heads down, they're getting stuff done, and they over-invest in the close-knit execution networks, and they under-invest in the kinds of opportunities that you can find when you're engaging in entrepreneurial networks, when you're reaching out to people who are not part of your day-to-day circle. And I think it's worth investing in those networks, because that's where the new opportunities, the new ideas are going to come from.
And also, in your opinion, what are the top 3 soft skills all career-driven females, in your opinion, should have?
The top results, the top
Top 3 soft skills.
soft skills. Well, when you think about soft skills, they're really hard skills. I think it's a mistake to think about things like, finance is a hard skill, and understanding human beings and building teams is a soft skill. I think the first one is really having the ability to deeply listen to people, really understand what's being communicated, and have some empathy for them, meaning you're understanding at a human level what people are going through. You're not just sort of rushing through your day, not paying attention. So that's one. I think building teams that are well designed and that can execute against projects is another really useful soft skill. If you think about the way a lot of teams and companies are created, they're sort of accidental. It's like, who's available and who wants to work with whom and who put up their hand and volunteered. We don't sit down and say, what kind of people do we need on this team? What kind of skills do we need represented? What kind of viewpoints do we have? And then I'd say a third one is perhaps easier for women than for men, maybe in some cases, which is, being able to speak candidly about what's really going on. So being honest about the data, being honest about what you see, being able to have honest conversations, to give feedback is huge. So I'd say those kinds of skills. So listening with empathy, creating great teams, being able to give honest feedback are all very, very helpful.
When a brilliant woman or man is about to present a big idea but feels self-doubt, what is a simple mind trick or way to change her thinking that you can recommend so she can speak with full confidence?
Well, when you're presenting an idea, there's no substitute for practicing. And practice with a friend, practice with your spouse, practice with a cohort. Don't go into a big important presentation completely cold. I think that's one thing. The next thing, and by the way, AI is very helpful for that. You can actually present to an AI and have it give you feedback and say, hey, you use the word 15 times in your first 5 minutes. So I think practice is really good. Secondly, think about how you're designing the presentation. And a big mistake I see a lot of people make is they design the thing the way that they thought of it. So they'll start off with, I'd like you to meet my teammates. It's Joe and it's Jane and it's Suhit. And back in March, we started to talk about it. Your audience is asleep before you've even started. So design it with a hook. What's a big idea? So what I'm going to reveal to you is a way that our company can add an additional $100 million to our bottom line with a very affordable cost, because we've discovered a crack in the market that we think we can uniquely fill. yeah, now I'm interested, right? Tell me more. So you have to start with something that's really interesting and then logically lead your listeners through the path that got you there and then end with a compelling call to action. So please support me. Here's the next step. Here's the next meeting that I want you to go through. So have it be a satisfying and logical presentation, and then people will tend to follow you. I would also really emphasize telling stories. Human beings really respond to stories. So have some good stories in your back pocket. Don't just depend on a set of PowerPoint slides. Some of the most effective presentations we've ever seen have no PowerPoint slides at all. They're completely stories, and there may be a technology or there may be something that someone's pointing to, but they don't have those sort of PowerPoint slides with 14-point font that everybody's supposed to follow. That's a very ineffective way of conveying what you want to convey.
What about ideas often get ignored? What is one simple or smart phrase or way to talk that they can use right away to make sure the expert voice is heard and respected?
Well, if an idea is being ignored, I think you need to understand why. Are there other things that people are paying attention to that are, for the time being anyway, more important? Is the idea not credible? Did you not communicate it in a compelling way? Is it, for whatever reason, not the right time? So you need to do a little bit of reflection on why is it being ignored. Then, of course, depending on the reason, that would depend on what your action is. So if it's just the wrong time, maybe you want to come back to it. If it looks too expensive or complicated, or it's not on the organization's roadmap at the moment, then you need to connect it to something that people do care about. And don't try to force an idea down people's throats. It's got to be something that's the right time. And you also want to think about reinforcing it. And this could be another case where you want to bring in allies. Bring in other people who can reinforce the idea, repeat it, mention it multiple times, so that it doesn't become just you talking. It's a group of people bringing that idea forward.
Changing big old systems is hard. How should women leaders decide when to be patient and wait versus when to push hard for a fast, big change?
Well, big changes all at once. I can think of a few cases where they really have been effective, but by and large, you're better off starting off with an accumulation of small changes that eventually mount into something that's larger. If you really do need to make a big change all at once, then you need to make sure you've got a tremendous amount of support. So you need your board, you need your leadership, you need your peers to really be behind it. Otherwise, the forces of resistance will just overcome it. And then I think there's a very simple formula that I like to use, which is the bulk of the people that you're trying to get to change need to be dissatisfied with the way things are. So I call that constructive dissatisfaction with the current state of affairs. As in, why should we change? If everything's fine, what's the point? So you need to build that case, right, for why is a change unnecessary. Then you need to be really clear on what's the vision for the future state. What does good look like, right, in the future? And then you need to be conscientious about, well, what are the obstacles that could get in the way of going from here to where we want to get to? And a lot of times this has different kinds of leaders that are involved when you're trying to make a change. So let me give an example. I'll take the modern American women's movement. And so after the Second World War, people came back from battle. We had the emergence of suburbs. We had the rise of the sort of prototypical 2 parents, 2 kids, a dog, and a car kind of family. But for a lot of women, they felt kind of that this wasn't enough. They wanted to be recognized for their professional accomplishments. They wanted to be seen as equally participating members in society, and that at the time meant being able to take a role in work or whatever. And gradually, this dissatisfaction became quite strident, and it erupted in a big symbolic act. Women had a march. And they burned their bras, right? Now, my next door neighbor looks at this and he goes, those women are horrible. They're yelling, they hate men, they're angry, they're strident, they're, just not very nice. And so that was kind of the dissatisfaction moment. Then one of the visionary leaders in the modern American women's movement was a woman named Betty Friedan, and she wrote a great book called Feminine Mystique. And in that book, she made an observation that, women deserved equal pay for equal work. Now, my next door neighbor can look at that and go, wow, you know, I guess that makes sense. Like that, like I can understand where she's coming from. That's a bridge, right, between the dissatisfied people and the people that are trying to make the change happen. And then in the modern American women's movement, one of the process leaders was a woman named Patsy Mink. And Patsy was of Japanese descent. Her dad had been locked up during the war in a very unfortunate episode in American history. And she was brilliant, and she wanted to become a doctor. But she was turned down from every medical school she applied to, even though less qualified men were admitted. And she went and tried to find out why this was. And she was told, oh, well, you're a woman. And she said, yeah, I know. And they said, yeah, but, here's the problem. Like, we admit you, you're going to take a place that otherwise would be taken by a man. You're going to go through 8, 9, 10, 12 years of training. And then you're going to decide to start a family, and you're going to drop out. So what's the point of even starting? And so she gave up her dream of becoming a doctor and became a lawyer instead, and spent her career relentlessly striking down the discriminatory legislation that had stood in the way of women's progress. So it used to be perfectly legal to reject people because of their gender for admission to professional schools. It used to be legal to list jobs in the newspaper as jobs for women and jobs for men. It used to be perfectly legal to refuse mortgages to young couples who hadn't even had a family yet, because the woman was of childbearing age and therefore her income could not be counted. I mean, hundreds of things like that made the world a very uneven playing field for women. And that was sort of the process leadership. So dissatisfaction times a vision times a process for eliminating obstacles. That's what I've found to be a recipe that really works.
Oh, that's very nice. Looking ahead, where is the biggest new open opportunity to take the lead and change the future of worldwide innovation?
Well, I think we're at this fascinating moment when the old, I'll use a fancy term for it, the old techno-social regime is starting to disappear, and the new one is just beginning to emerge. So what is the old one? The old one is based on cheap energy, plentiful materials, suburbs, highways, air travel, globalization, unfettered trade, and, right? The whole kind of underpinnings of what we would think of as the modern global economy. And what's starting to change now is we're going from mass production to customized and personalized digital goods. We're going from physical products to things that are dematerialized. We're going from large hierarchical organizations that produce, massive numbers of things, to value creation at the level of teams or even single individuals. We've got the first single person unicorns are out there now. In other words, companies valued at $1 billion that are one person. And so I think the biggest opportunities are going to be in this new kind of growth, this new kind of social system that's going to emerge based on digital technologies. And we don't really know completely what that looks like yet, but we know it's going to be a big change. We also know that these exponential technologies tend to open up vast amounts of growth, that AI and technologies like it are truly disruptive. And what do I mean by that? I mean, they're making things that used to be really complicated, easy to do for an ordinary person. And they're making things that used to be really expensive, inexpensive. And so once you've got those two conditions, so what was complicated becomes easy, what was expensive becomes inexpensive. Now you've got technologies that can be accessible by vast numbers of people. And that generally increases consumption and it increases growth. So I think there are huge opportunities in this future environment to come.
Speaking of AI, how should we think about AI not just as a tool, but as a temporary competitive edge? And what is one immediate step they can take to actively shape its development and strategy?
Well, I think we're at the early stages of AI development. It's a very new kind of technology for most people. Where I'm already seeing AI be useful in strategy is in development of scenarios, mining for weak signals. We've already seen its impact in things like producing analyses, in combing through vast data sets to find potentially relevant patterns. I think we're seeing a lot of that. I don't think AI is going to do your strategy for you. It'll give you data. It'll show patterns rather. But I think strategy in the future is going to be as much about imagination and inventiveness as it is about analysis, as we've conventionally relied on it. So I think we're going to see a lot more imaginative strategies. We're going to see strategies that are truly novel, emerging. And then, as I mentioned, strategies that take advantage of this new array of technologies that we're able to utilize now are going to be where the future is going to lie.
None of us are able to achieve success without some help along the way. Is there a particular person who you are grateful towards who helped to get where you are today?
Oh, there's so many, of course. So clearly, my PhD thesis advisor, a gentleman by the name of Ian McMillan, was incredibly instrumental. I mean, he would do things like tell conference organizers, "Well, I'm not coming unless I can bring a doctoral student," and that would often be me. Not always; sometimes it was other people, but often be me. My first boss before I did my PhD was a terrific woman leader. She was a deputy commissioner in the city of New York. She had a huge role in procurement, and she was just an amazing role model. Really showed what a powerful woman operating in business could look like. So those are two examples I can definitely think of. I'd say my husband has been hugely helpful. He's always believed that I could do great things, and I think having that support at home is very, very helpful. I have a friend, Aviva Wittenberg Cox, who studies women's careers, and she says, if you can't count on someone at home supporting you, don't get married.
Uh, are you working on any new exciting? Are you working on any exciting new projects right now, Rita?
Yes, I've got a new book, which hopefully will be out next year. And it is looking at this question of inventive strategy and how we can think about strategizing in this world of digital goods to come. How do we design organizations? How do we think about our competitive strategies when things are much more fluid than we're accustomed to them being? When you can invent a new product with practically zero investment. How do you think about that world?
As we are going to the end of our show, let me ask you. Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "Women are like tea bags. We don't know our true strength until we are in hot water." In life, how are you in hot water, Rita? How are you brewing?
Oh, well, to me, the question of professional growth is always, are you taking on new challenges? Are you taking on new projects? So for me, the book is certainly a place to grow. Certainly at Columbia Business School, where we have two beautiful new business school buildings, we're really growing our outreach to people. We're trying to have more impact in the world. So those would be a couple of examples. But I think it's continuously, working with companies, creating new challenges, taking on new projects, and not just sitting, living off the past success.
What is the number one book you can sit and think, "Oh, I wish I read before I started my career"?
Oh, huh. That's a hard one. I've forgotten now. I'd say certainly books like Built to Last and In Search of Excellence are super, super helpful. I think some of the books about women's careers have been quite useful as well.
Mm? Uh, let's imagine that you could meet anyone in the world for a private breakfast. Who would it be and where would you choose to meet?
Well, I don't know that I'd care so much about where. I think meeting Malala would be absolutely fascinating. I mean, what an amazing young woman, and to have won a Nobel Peace Prize at that early an age. it kind of sets you up either for a life of struggling to live up to that, or a life of just being able to use that platform for amazing things. I also recently had such a meeting with a woman named Carlotta Perez, who's an economist who I have been very influenced by in terms of her perspective on how capitalism evolves. And we had a lunch actually in England, in a little town that she lives in, which was a lot of fun.
And thank you so much, Rita, for joining us here in our podcast. And that's it from 197 of the PhD live stream. Thank you to our guest, Rita McGrath. To stay positive, to stay updated, and ensure you never miss a positivity hack delivered, follow Women on IT and turn on notifications to be alerted once the video has been released. And next week, we will be joined by Senior Director of IT Strategic Initiatives and Operations at DuPont Specialty Products, Carla Pantano. About we will talk about the growth mindset playbook from discomfort to digital transformation. Thank you so much to our guests once again, Rita, and thank you to our fabulous team, Desiree, Kim, and AJ. So, as always, a positivity quote comes from positive thinking only and goes look for something positive in each day. Even if some days you have to look a little harder. Today is your day to hack the future, hack the positivity you want. Thank you.